Well, the far-right President Jair Bolsonaro has vowed to ignite the flagging economy, but has offered few details. Now, a big part of his campaign was a promise to strip away red tape, the so-called Brazil cost to help private companies. He lashed out at bureaucracy, saying it makes doing business in Brazil difficult and expensive. His choice of Paulo Guedes as his top economic advisor helped him win over the business community. Guedes is a vocal reformist and has promised to cut the budget deficit and restore government finances. The president has also pledged to overhaul the pension system, but this will be very challenging, especially given the fractious Congress. Bolsonaro talked about pulling the country out of the Paris Climate Agreement and plans to build hydroelectric dams in the Amazon, and that has environmentalists worried. Well, for more on Brazil's economic prospects under Bolsonaro, I'm joined live from Rio de Janeiro by Jose Roberto de Toledo. He's the online editor and political columnist of Piauí magazine. So thank you for joining us. Let's see now, how do President Bolsonaro's economic reform proposals match up with the needs of everyday Brazilians and Brazilian companies?
Well, it's going to be a challenge, and Bolsonaro admits that he knows nothing about economics and kind of delegates this to his super economic minister, Paulo Guedes. Paulo Guedes is a former banker and an ultra-liberal guy that follows the Chicago School of Economics, so that seems that we will have much more privatizations in Brazil under Bolsonaro. Brazilian government that will try to sell some of its 138 public companies, especially in the energy sector. If this plan goes well, and if Guedes can sell part of these companies, this will give time to Bolsonaro to balance the federal budget that is really a mess, that it has a huge deficit, and this prevents the economy to recover.
So looking at the economic team that Bolsonaro is surrounding himself with, what would be your longer-term outlook for Brazil?
Well, the situation is bad now. Brazil has 12 million unemployed people, but the expectations are much better since the election. 2 in 3 Brazilians believe that under Bolsonaro, the economy will grow faster and stronger. Also, the entrepreneurs are much more optimistic. So what we must see in the coming months is if the private sector will put their money where their mouth is. It means if this optimism will become investments.
Now, this was a very divisive election, and we know that with this populist right-wing parties gaining more traction, especially in the last 2 years, it seems as though these elections around the world are partly becoming a referendum on globalization. Where does Bolsonaro stand on this?
Well, Bolsonaro has the same rhetoric anti-globalization as Trump or other right-wing leaders around the world. He says that globalization is bad for Brazil, but not in all aspects of it, in some of them, especially in, for example, global warming. He doesn't believe in global warming caused by mankind. So he almost pulled off Brazil from the Paris Agreement. He didn't, but under his government, we should see that deforestation in the Amazon will grow faster, probably because the rules are going to be much less effective than they are now. This is just one aspect of it. Others is that he, as Trump, has the same idea that, for example, immigration is a bad thing. Immigration is not a big deal in Brazil, but we have some immigrants from Venezuela and Haiti. So this is going to be a subject under his rule.
And we did see that after Bolsonaro's inauguration speech, President Trump reached out and congratulated him, and they tweeted back and forth showing support for each other. A lot of people call him the tropical Trump, but how fair is that comparison?
Well, they both despise the traditional press, the traditional media. They ruled through Twitter. Bolsonaro was congratulated by Trump through Twitter and responded through Twitter too. And they have the same rhetoric. And I fear that under Bolsonaro, Brazil will adopt some policies from the US Department, the same policies. This will change Brazilian relations around the world, especially with China, I fear, which is a bad thing for Brazil because China is the biggest partner in trade in Brazil. Brazil has a $20 billion surplus with China, and if this changes, this can mean bad news for Brazil.
And just very quickly, I have about 20 seconds. How difficult is it going to be for Bolsonaro to push his policies through, given how fractured the Congress is?
Well, it's very divided, as Paulo said. There are 30 parties in the Congress, and Bolsonaro's party has less than 10% of the chairs, of the votes in the parliament. So it will be a struggle to get the majority that he needs to push the reforms, especially, as Paulo said too, the pension system reform, which is the most important of all. If he fails to approve it, the market will react badly. Also, there's another problem. One of his sons is involved in a political scandal, and Bolsonaro was elected on the promise that he will fight corruption. So this is going to be an issue too.
All right, thank you so much. Journalist Jose Roberto de Toledo, their online editor and political columnist of Piauí Magazine.